Welcome to the Memories of a Moonbird podcast, exploring life one story at a time. Hello friends, today on the show, he's an Air Force veteran, engineer, and web developer who turned his talents to writing because of a family mystery. As an adult, he found out that his last name wasn't really his last name. That search for the truth unearthed a long-kept family secret and tragedy worthy of a page-turning novel called Heart of Steel. Here to talk about it and tell us a little bit about that story, please welcome author Kevin Miller. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate you inviting me on.
It's great to have you here. So tell everybody where you're from, first of all.
Well, I was born in Canton, Ohio. We actually moved to Tempe, Arizona when I was 6 years old, and that's where I grew up. I had relatives in the Ohio area, the Canton area in particular, and we'd go back and forth there. So I'm real familiar with Ohio and like I said, real familiar with Arizona where I grew up.
Well, for you, what was for the years you were in Ohio? Do you remember growing up there, or was it too young?
I do. No, I actually went to kindergarten in Ohio, and I remember it well. I mean, I remember walking to school in the snow. I remember my mom, dressing us up, and then we'd get outside, and it'd be so cold we'd want to come back in, and she wouldn't be real happy because she took all that time getting us ready to go outside, and we just want to turn around and come back in. So I remember it, and ice skating on the lakes and stuff. And then going back in the summers to visit grandparents and such, so.
I know you're just a few years older than me, I think, but is this the era of moon boots? Because I had the moon boots in the 80s.
No, man, this was long before that. I don't want to even give away my age, man, but it was long before that, yeah.
Did you travel a bunch growing up with your family?
Yeah, we did. We traveled in the States mostly. I mean, like I said, we would travel. We'd take a camper and we'd drive from Phoenix all the way back to Canton.
Oh, that's an awesome road trip.
And it was a great road trip because you were going through Texas. We would park in the KOA camps because we had the camper. And I think one time in Shamrock, Texas, man, a tornado came through.
Wow.
Yeah, it was exciting. But yeah, that was a fun trip. And we just it was long before GPS, so we had our marker and our map, our atlas, and we just kind of follow it along and such. And then we come to
California. Even before AAA and getting triptychs and all that stuff. Yeah,
long before. Yeah.
I love it. I also grew up with KOA campgrounds, and I think it's such a phenomenal experience because I grew up in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
It was awesome. So I know you joined the Air Force at some point. What led you to join the military?
I'll tell you, I joined the military when I was about 19 years old, and mainly because I was out of high school and I needed a job. I was working for $3 an hour moving furniture, and I had a girlfriend at the time, and she'd gotten pregnant, and it was just one of those things. Okay, we got to get married, but how am I going to support this family? So I made the decision I wanted to go into the military, and that way I could go to school. Uncle Sam paid for my degree. I've got a degree in electronic technology that I earned by going through the Air Force. I have another degree in information systems because I'm a web developer by trade.
Cool.
In addition to being an author. Yeah.
That's awesome. So jack of all trades.
I'm telling you, man, it's fun, and it's like, just do what you want to do in life, don't hold back and don't wish you did something, just do it.
So with your military experience, I assume you did a little bit of traveling, whether it was even in the United States for base to base or whatnot. Yeah,
I wasn't lucky enough to get sent to the nice places overseas like Spain or Japan or something. They just wouldn't send me there. I'm a boy from Arizona, and the first place they sent me was Grand Forks, North Dakota in December. So I got an education.
Talk about culture shock.
Oh my gosh, man. I talk about learning how to drive in the snow, and I mean the weather, the temperature up there was just ungodly.
Wow.
And so I spent about 3.5 years up there, and then they decided to send me to Lubbock, Texas, which a lot of people might not like in the Panhandle, but to me it was paradise, after coming from those winters in the north like that. And then, I've had, I spent time at Biloxi, Mississippi, going to school there, and then bounced around. I got to go to Wright-Patterson for a few weeks to do school.
That's cool. What did you do in the Air Force?
I was what they call a ground navigational aids technician, which is basically just an electronic technician. I worked on navigation systems for aircraft to where the aircraft will dial in a certain, position there, and the ground beacons will give them their position. And then we have these instrument landing systems, they call them, where they would you bring the aircraft in at a certain angle, and we would work on those. So we had a lot of responsibility. One tweak of a dial could send an aircraft off and to the
wrong place.
And then they lock it up, and someone's going to jail. So there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Did you like it?
I did. I liked it a lot. It was great. I made a lot of good friends, man, in the military, and you just it kind of has that family vibe. You make friends, and you make friends for life. And it's just you move around a lot, but you're kind of a family in the military.
That's cool.
It's really that feeling.
So tell me a little bit about your book. Obviously, the general. Well, sure. I know because I've read the summary, and I've kind of peeked through some of the pages. Mm-hmm. Different last name.
Yes.
And you didn't know about this. I'd love for you to fill the listeners in, kind of the summary of what that...
Basically how this all got started was several years ago, actually, I learned that my last name's not really Miller. I thought it was the All-American Miller, and turns out it's
Puchalski.
Puchalski, a very Polish Puchalski. And it kind of stunned us because my grandfather is the one that changed our name in 1920, and we didn't know why. He took this to the grave. I mean, it was like a secret to them and his siblings. They swore to secrecy, and they never did, tell anything about it. So my uncle was at a funeral, and some cousins approached him and gave him some newspaper articles. And in the newspaper articles from 1920, it talks about this family tragedy, this scandal. My great-grandfather was murdered in his sleep. And then my great-grandmother, she had claimed that three men broke into the farmhouse in Southington. It's a small township outside of Warren, and tied her up, bound and gagged her, and murdered my great-grandfather and stole, some cases say $500, others say $600, which is a lot of money in 1920.
Yeah, back then that's a lot of money. Yeah.
So my grandfather is 12 at the time, and he's woken up, and she tells him the story that somebody murdered his father and tied her up, and she sent him to get the sheriff. And so he runs and gets the sheriff, and then of course the sheriff comes, and the investigation begins. And these newspaper articles from 1920, they kind of chronicle that for the next week and a half, 2 weeks. And the story just keeps taking these bizarre twists and turns, and everything isn't as it seems. And basically my grandfather and his siblings end up in an orphanage in 1920.
Oh, so she lost custody.
She did. Everything just kind of came apart, and the story wasn't what it was. My great-grandfather was a very cruel and abusive man. You can probably see where this is going. Mm-hmm. He was the good old boy. He was a rich farmer. He owned a lot of property, and he was kind of like the good old boy. He drank a lot of whiskey and went out and womanizing and stuff. And he would come home and he'd beat the crap out of my great grandmother, to the point that she lost 6 pregnancies.
Oh my God!
Then he started beating my great aunt, who was 15 at the time. So it just got really bad, and he ended up with a bullet in his head in his sleep.
Yeah.
And my grandfather, like I said, ended up in an orphanage with his siblings, and that was an awful place to be. So my grandfather, being who he is.
Now, wait, did your great-grandmother get arrested for the crime or no?
Well, you should read the book.
That's
Daniel.
the best answer.
Read the book, because there's more going on there. I mean, you can probably your mind's probably leading you where you think it's going, but there's more twists to it.
Love it.
That you'll find out. And my grandfather, being who he was, he decided to run away from that orphanage. So the plan was he was going to run away from the orphanage, find a job, earn enough money, go back and steal his siblings out of the orphanage.
Wow. And how old was he at this time?
He was 12, almost 13.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm like, because as I'm writing this book, I'm trying to channel him in, because I was close to my grandpa, and I'm like, man, at 12, 13 years old, could I have done this, what he's doing?
Now, was he alive when you were writing the book?
He was not. He's not. He passed. And I don't know if he was alive. If I were to ask him or interview him, he probably wouldn't say a word to me. He wouldn't. And I get asked this question a lot. I'm like, well, your grandfather wanted to take this stuff to the grave. Why are you telling the story now? And my answer to that is because after I learned the story and learned everything, I was so taken back, and I so admire my grandfather that I feel like I need to tell his story.
It's an incredible thing.
It's an inspiring story, and people who have read it, are inspired. I mean, it's an emotional book, and almost all my readers, I get so many emails and stuff from people that says I just could not put the book down. I cried, I laughed, I felt his pain, I felt joy, and so that really makes me feel good, and other people who are inspired in their life just by this young man's story. So I feel it's a good thing. That's the reason I'm telling his story, because I think it needs to be told. He wouldn't tell it himself. He was a very humble person. He'd want to know about you. He'd say, Daniel, tell me about your life. I want to hear about you. He wouldn't want to talk about himself.
Well, do you think he was like that because he endured so much pain early on that he just didn't want to talk about those things?
I think so, because the reason he changed our name was to protect the family, protect our family name, and protect us, and to keep that horrible scandal and tragedy, away from his descendants. He wanted to start anew.
Well, when did you decide to write the book?
I decided to write the book about 3 years ago. I finally sat down. My dad wanted to write this book. Robert Miller. He's still alive. He's 86 years old. He'll be 87 next month, and he's still coherent. He's got the mind of a 40-year-old still, but he wanted to write the book and he just didn't know how. And he was going to write it more as a documentary type of thing. And he asked me, he says, I got all these documents, because he's been talking to his cousin, and he had a gold mine of documents. And he said, I'm going to give these to you if you'll write the book. And I said, I'll write the book, Dad, but I'm going to write it as a novel. I want to write it as a true, historical fiction based on a true story, because 80%, 85% of it is factual, but there's parts that we don't know what happened. So I have to, as a writer, be creative and tie those things together to.
Well, it's creative license.
Yeah,
to do
exactly. To make the story flow. And
what are your hopes for the book?
My hopes for the book are this. Well, the first hope for the book, it's already in motion, is to make a movie out of it. Now, being here in Hollywood has its benefits. As I said, my daughters are actors. We've been here 6 years and they've been acting. And in that process, of course, I meet a lot of people in the business. And I have a good friend, and I gave him the book. I just said, hey, and he just read it. He goes, I read your book just because, a friend handed me a book and I wanted to read his book. Well, after he read it, he calls me up and he's like, dude, I want to option this book. We need to put this on the screen and turn this into a movie. I'm like, I was hoping you'd say that, because that's what I want to do. My goal is to get it on the screen and get the movie written as well. It's getting a lot of good press. I'm on the radio quite a bit, and I was actually on TV and on Channel 8 in San Diego, and so it's getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, it's how it starts. You got to build the buzz, man.
Exactly.
For the option, is he trying to shop it to get it purchased?
Yes.
And made?
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Right now we're negotiating with a screenwriter who's going to write the screenplay.
Awesome.
Because that's a whole different skill set. Writing a book and writing a screenplay, two different, and you know that.
Yep. It's the skill of taking, like sometimes in a novel, you'll have 3 pages that are describing a living room, and you have to put that into a sentence.
Right. Because you're visual. Yeah, it's a totally different thing. It's like, I don't think I can do that, So, and we want a screenwriter, who's got accolades and is in the business, and who, so the guy we're talking to right now has already done some feature films and stuff. So he's
great.
So we're working with him. He read the book, he loved it. He's like, man, he goes, hats off to you. He goes, this is your first book. You did a good job and stuff. And he goes, I'm really excited about the story. So I think we got him. He's in. And then once we have the screenplay, then we'll start pitching that.
That's great.
And see if we can get it greenlit.
Well, after you win the Academy Award, we'll have you back on the podcast, and we can talk about how before it all happened, we were having this great conversation.
My gosh, yeah. So, absolutely.
Are you going to write more books?
Yeah, actually, I'm starting another book. I'm doing a couple things. I got so many things going at one time. I'm actually trying to work on the audiobook, because I want to put this in audiobook as well.
Nice.
And get that out there. But yeah, I'm actually starting on a second book. It's going to be another story, actually, of a family member, and my great-great-grandmother, they called her Mingo Indian, Iroquois Nation.
Wow, cool.
And she was married to my great-grandfather, who was Irish. So there's a lot going on there. You got an interracial, marriage back in the 50s or so.
Very controversial in that area.
Yeah, very controversial. There's a lot of good stuff there, and I have a lot less facts, so it's going to be much more fiction, with real people.
So you can have a liberty of flexing your creative muscles a little bit.
Totally. Yeah,
How
totally.
fun.
Yeah.
Well, definitely keep us posted on that.
Oh, definitely, for sure.
I'm curious, as a writer, what was one of your favorite childhood books?
Oh my gosh, man. There's so many. I mean, I remember in high school, I read Summer of 42, and I thought that was a cool story because, the friendships and stuff he described, I thought was very
And how
cool.
old were you when you read it?
I was probably 15, 16 or so. Yeah.
How did you feel when you were, because you've read a lot of books and you enjoy reading. How did you feel during the creative process of writing your own book?
It was amazing, man. It was an emotional journey, Daniel. It was like, there was times where I got so emotional I had to kind of stop because the book it's got some pretty intense, stuff in it as far as what they went through, So I'd get emotional, and it was tough there. But it's funny because my wife is like an avid reader, and she's an amazing. She should be a writer herself, and she helped me quite a bit. And she loved the book. The last part of the book is the love story between my grandfather and my Irish grandma that he meets, and they own a speakeasy. A lot of stuff going on there.
And this is all true.
It's all true. You like gangsters and speakeasies. There's some stuff there, but she goes, I loved your book, honey, but the love story was my favorite at the end.
This is like Ohio Goodfellas.
Exactly. Totally. Yeah. Little Canton, or Little Chicago, rather. I'm sorry. Little Chicago, that part of Canton, that seedy part of Canton, it was called Little Chicago. And there was gangsters there. There was a rumor that Al Capone, hid out there when the feds were looking for him.
How long did the actual research portion of the book take for you?
It took probably about 3 years for me to put everything together.
And you made multiple trips to Ohio too.
Yeah. No, I definitely went to Ohio, check it out because I wanted to see and sit and feel, the places I was writing about.
Sure. I think that's literary pilgrimages like that are very important. I think when you're writing, I write fantasy, like for
cool.
Lord of the Rings kind of stuff now.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But I try to, if I'm writing a sequence that takes place in a desert, I'll try to go out to like the Mojave and just sit in the desert and feel the heat and just kind of get that vibe. What would it be like to travel on this and to carry around a backpack of gear? And so that's great that you did that. It's really cool. Yeah. What was there a particular scene that was hardest to write for you?
The hardest scene for me to write was probably one of the first scenes in the first chapter. And that's where it's a scene where my great-grandfather, he goes to town, he's drunk, it's after breakfast, and my mother didn't have time to clean the kitchen and clean everything up because she's taking care of all these kids, and he comes home early, and it just uses that for an excuse to beat her. Mm-hmm. And my great-aunt comes in and defending her mom, ends up getting abused as well. And then my grandfather, he tries to stand, he's 12 years old. He tries to stand up to his dad, but he obviously can't. Yeah. So that was a real emotional scene. And it was a scene that I think most readers that have read it have said that's pretty tough, man. That was pretty emotional stuff there. But they couldn't put the book down. They couldn't, a lot of the readers read it in 1 day or 2 days because they just couldn't stop reading it. So I felt good about, that aspect of it. But
I know you've talked on your website about being a man of faith. I was curious about your journey. Was there anything, did you grow up spiritual and religious, or was there a particular thing in your life that happened to bring you closer to your beliefs?
Yeah, honestly, I think I grew up that way. I had a mother who would always read us Bible stories and put us to bed. So I think at a very young age, I was deeply religious, deeply faithful. I don't like to say religious, but
there's a difference between religious, which is following a specific doctrine to the letter, and then there's religious, spiritual, or faith-based, which is I just believe in something greater than myself, and that could be defined however you want. So.
Right? Yeah, I grew up Christian. My dad was Catholic, Irish Catholic, and my mother was Protestant. She was Presbyterian, so obviously we went to the Presbyterian church because the mom kind of what do they say? The neck, turns the head. So, but anyway, yeah, she was really good. I mean, she would always read us Bible stories, always teaching us. We'd always be in church and stuff. And I just grew a very close relationship with Jesus Christ. I'm a Christian, and I grew up that way, and I still love to talk about it with anybody who wants to talk about it.
Was being a person of faith integral to this story, and did you rely on your faith to get you through some of the tougher parts of writing it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of stuff in there that my faith, got me through, and it's interesting because when I was a boy and I would talk to my grandfather about faith, he I think was agnostic at a time, and he would say, there is no God, and I never understood that. It crushed me because I'm thinking, oh my God, man, Grandpa's, he's not saved because, he doesn't believe that there's a God. Even though later on I learned that he did. He really did. It's just now I understand why he felt that, because your father's murdered, you're 12 years old, your mother's in prison, you're in an orphanage, with your siblings. I mean, so what he went through, just learning about his life, I'm like, now I understand why he was mad at God. Even though later on, if he didn't have faith, he had it later on in his life, and he found Christ, and he died a Christian.
Now, something I like to ask people who are more spiritually inclined, such as yourself, and I'm not expecting you to have any kind of, end-all, be-all answer,
Oh, sure.
but you look out in the world and you see some of these terrible things that are happening. And a lot of the people who aren't religious or identify as, I don't believe in anything, whatever, fine.
Right.
I just believe everyone's entitled to believe whatever they want.
Yeah.
But my question for you, is when you look out at the world and you see some of these bad things, people often use the argument, well, if there is a God, why does he let people suffer? Why does he? So what does someone like you say to that question? I'm curious.
That is such a tough question. And I hear that question a lot. And it's a good point, because, that's the kind of question I think we would need to ask God,
Yeah.
I don't think I can answer that question, but I feel that God, really my own personal belief is that God gives us a freedom of will. He lets us choose the path that we go. He has a deeper understanding than we do. But why tragic things happen in this world, I don't know. If I was in charge, they wouldn't happen. Children wouldn't get cancer.
Yeah.
People wouldn't be, raped or attacked and stuff. But, who am I? Who am I to say, or who am I to judge? And that's one of the things I try to lead my life by, is just not judging other people.
So, Kevin, what does literary success look like to you if you had to define it?
Oh, man. Yeah, no. If I could make anything happen that I wanted to happen with this, I would obviously sell 10,000 copies of my book, and be a New York best. I would.
How about
I would
10
like
million,
this.
man? Come on, go for a
10
bigger
million. All right. Well, 10. If I'm going to go big, I'm going to dream. I should go 10 million.
Yeah,
You're
10
right.
million.
Yeah, absolutely. And have that kind of following, and mostly not necessarily for the accolades and stuff, but because I really want the message to be out. I really want people to read this book and embrace the story. And maybe, not everyone's, I don't expect everyone's going to love the book, although the majority that read it do. It's getting some really good reviews. That's
cool.
Such. So that would be, and then to be able to establish myself as a legitimate author, not that I'm illegitimate, but this is my first book. So I can't.
Well, I'm just going to tell you right now, any person in the world that from start to finish actually writes an entire book and puts it out there, self-published or get it published, whatever, they're an author. They are an author. Whether the book's good or not is irrelevant. They are still an author.
I agree with
so
that.
you should leave knowing that at least.
No, I give myself that much.
Yeah,
I agree with that, because there's
should.
a lot that goes into that. And I know, and that's what I always try to encourage people too when I'm on social media. It's like, everybody's got a story. Every family's got a story. As you could write it. And it's just. Not everybody will take the time to do it. A lot of people want to, but they don't take the time to do it. And it's just like, why not? Sit down and start writing.
What's one of the most interesting things you think you've seen in your life?
Oh, most interesting things I think I've seen in my life. I kind of got to be a little trite here maybe and say probably the birth of my child, my youngest daughter. I didn't get to see my older kids born, because in those days they didn't let me come in. But my youngest daughter, Gracie, I actually got to go in and witness birth. And if you don't believe in God, witness the birth of your child, And I got to cut her cord, And so that to me it just blew me away, And what my wife went through, And I'm standing back there and coaching her on, and she's there, taking all the hit and the pain and stuff, but. That was a miracle, I witnessed a miracle, and that to me, I think, is the most amazing, thing to me.
If you had your big literary success and you made, the millions of dollars that would come from it, where's the first place you think you and your wife would travel?
Oh my gosh, there's so many places that we love. We've been to Hawaii, which I absolutely love Hawaii. We've been to the Bahamas. We went there actually when she was pregnant with Gracie. She was, sticking out there, and we had a good time there. I would love to go to the Holy Lands. I'd love to go see Egypt and the Holy Lands and just that part of the earth, because it's just like the oldest, one of the oldest regions. I think that would be fascinating. But I love beaches, man. I mean, give me a beach and a beer in my hand and a chair and, And,
well, the beer in your hand brings up another good question, which is, what is your all-time favorite drink of choice?
I'll take a beer, man. I'll take a beer any day.
Particular kind of beer?
I like all kinds, man. I had a one time for Christmas, I got a 30-pack of beers from all over the world. And my brother-in-law and I sat there at Christmas and we just tried every single one of them, So I mean, I don't know.
I could just see you two guys chilling out, drinking 30 beers together.
Yeah, no, we were just, hey, try this one, man. You got to try. We were even trading off, you got to try this. This one's from Belgium, and this one's from some country I can't even pronounce, But I'm more of a beer drinker if I drink. I don't drink a lot, but like my uncle. I mean, I have an uncle who was like 6'6", and he was a basketball. He could drink a lot of beer, and I could not keep up with him, but. But that would be my drink of choice. My wife's a wine drinker. She'll take her wine.
Well, my other favorite question that always comes after the drink question is, let's pretend for 1 second that you get to sit in a room by yourself for 4 hours with anyone alive or dead from all of human history.
Oh, wow.
Who would you sit and talk to?
Man, that's there are so many. I mean, obviously, Jesus, because then I could ask him all these questions and get back to y'all.
I'm going to have to take Jesus off the list. And I'll tell you why. Because
that's always
a lot of people are choosing Jesus, and we got to. So they, besides Jesus, or any of your relatives.
Yeah, any of my relatives. I would say I would love to sit down and have a discussion with like William Wallace. Braveheart's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I've got a lot of genealogy from Ireland and some Scotland and stuff as well. And I think it would be fascinating, to sit down and talk to somebody, a warrior like that, a Scottish warrior like that, and just give me the inside scoop. Give me the stuff that's not in the movie, that's not in the history books, Tell me what's really going on here
Okay. So first choice, Jesus, second choice, William Wallace.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Since you've already written one book now, writing a second book as you currently are, do you feel any kind of pressure or responsibility to write something for the audience as opposed to just what you want to write? So did publishing a book create any kind of obligation for you as a writer, or you just look at it and go, nope, I just write the story I want to tell, and if the audience likes it, great.
Yeah, you know what? Because there's different foods for thoughts, but personally, me, I want to write my story. I just want to write the story. I want to tell a story, because I think as an author, you have to be a good storyteller, and you're telling a story, and not everybody's going to like the story, and I understand that certain concessions you have to write, in some ways and some things for your audience. You're trying to, not be too wordy in the things you're trying to say for your readers, sake. But at the same time, I would choose to write my story and tell it the way I want to tell it.
Well, do you really think that that's doing something for the audience, or that's just trying to be a good writer?
I think it's being a good writer.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Because I think there's when I write, I always edit. And then I oftentimes have Jolene look at it.
Oh,
and,
sure.
She'll say, hey, these 3 sentences here are irrelevant. You're saying the same thing. Cut this out.
Right.
And you realize, I can cut a good page out of this,
Totally.
Of all the places that you've actually traveled so far in your life, which one would you choose to tell other people, you should really, if you're only going to travel one place, you should go here?
Kauai. The Garden Island, man. Loved it.
Tell us why. Like, what about it is so special?
It was special because, just beside from the natural beauty, it's just a beautiful place, paradise, really. And I think I just have good memories there with taking my family. I actually took my older kids. My wife and I took several of our children with us, and it was such a fun family vacation. We barbecued steaks and such. And then we did a lot of stuff, man. We went snorkeling, we canoed on one of the rivers, Waiapi, I'm probably going to get that wrong. And then hiked down to some waterfalls, and we just, I mean, we did the whole experience. Went in a helicopter,
That's awesome.
which is kind of scary, really, because my wife's, she's a retired highway patrol, and she's like, I don't know if I want to go up in a helicopter,
Now, is she afraid of heights, or she's afraid of crashing?
She's afraid of helicopters, I think. Yeah, but she took it. She manned up or womaned up, however you want to say that, and she got in and did it. But
we did a helicopter ride to the top of a glacier in New Zealand, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. That was awesome.
So cool, man. You get to see so much from there.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're not so high in the air that you can't see anything, and you're low enough that but you still have this beautiful aerial view.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
So you're a spiritual guy. What is your spirit animal?
My spirit animal, I would say, if I got to pick one, I would say the orca. Yeah, because just his majestic, ways, there's nothing more majestic or bigger or badder in the ocean than the orca.
Technically there is something bigger.
Is there?
The blue whale is the largest
animal.
Well,
yeah, right. Bigger. Yeah, actually bigger. Maybe not.
Sorry
badder,
to get animal nerd on you, but
no, that's all good. That's all good, man. But
maybe not more badass.
They don't have teeth, right?
They do have a form of teeth called baleen, which they use to filter krill and all that stuff. So, but still, the orca is a badass animal.
He's a badass, man. I mean, even the great white sharks, stay away from them when they know they're in the area. They disappear.
So is that you as Kevin, like the badass writer that people should stay away from?
Yeah, I mean, if I came back as an animal, I think I'd want to be an orca, and because the family pod, because they're so, family oriented too. I mean, those pods stay together, and there's a lot more intelligence and stuff there in these creatures than we ever realized, I think.
I'm also glad that you didn't say I'd come back as a orca because I want to go to SeaWorld and entertain people.
Nah.
Kevin, I play a game with everyone on the podcast called 299 Philosophical and Life Questions with Moonbird. I've collected 299 questions over time from friends, family, and the internet. I'm going to ask you to pick two numbers randomly, your two favorite numbers. I'll read you those two questions, and we'll see what you have to say.
I would pick 7.
Okay.
And I would pick 13.
Okay. So 7, what are you not good at?
What am I not good at? Oh, man.
Nothing, Daniel.
Nothing. Yeah, it's like I'm not good at talking about what I'm not good at. There, I don't know, man, because I've been an athlete all my life, so I'm a pretty good athlete.
What's your favorite sport?
Football.
Okay.
Yeah, without a doubt, football.
Did you play?
I did. I played. I coached.
What position?
I was a wide receiver and a cornerback in high school.
Nice.
I ran track, actually pretty fast. What I'm good, not so good at, I don't know. Because I guess it depends on your age. When I was younger, probably not expressing my feelings or emotions or stuff. And as you get older, you kind of learn those things, and I get better. I'm hoping that all the things I'm not good at, I get better as I get older, because I'm trying to get better.
Okay. So how would you summarize that then?
I'm not real good at, how do you summarize that?
You're not really good at summarizing what you're not good at.
Summarizing what I'm not good at, yeah. I mean, that kind of stumped me a little bit.
Okay, number 13. How do you define success?
To me, success is if you're happy in what you do, no matter what it is you're doing, I mean, if you're selling hot dogs on a corner, if that makes you happy, you're successful. If you've got a good family life and people that love you and people that you love and you take care of each other and you're happy and content, I mean, you're successful.
Now, offline, I know you told me you have 262,000 children.
Yeah.
So
right.
20 years from now, when some of them are older and they listen to this podcast, what's something you want to say to them from further down the road?
I think what I would want to say to them is, we all, putting it in a perspective of an author, we all hold a pen in our hands. We all sometimes complain about our life story or how our life's going, or this is going wrong, or that's going wrong. And what I would want to tell them is that you have the pen in your hand, and you can rewrite that story any way you want to, because we don't realize as human beings the power that we have. And that's my advice to them. Rewrite your story. You got the pen. Do it.
I got to tell you, Kevin, I love that. You've got the pen. That is a beautiful, beautiful metaphor. So
thank you.
listeners, take that home with you. You've got the pen. Rewrite your story however you want. It's fantastic. Kevin, I want to thank you so much for coming in today.
Oh, yeah, man. Thanks so much, Dan. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I had a great time coming on
Yeah, and
the
I
show.
wish you the best of luck. I sincerely hope I get to go to the theater and see your movie.
Oh, man. I'll tell you what. I'll call you up. I'll give you free tickets, man.
It's a date.
Yeah.
Take care and have a great day.
Thanks, sir.
Friends and listeners, a quick epilogue here. Kevin and I actually recorded this episode just before the COVID-19 pandemic, and during that time, he's been so busy that he finished his second novel, White Skies, Black Mingo. It's the one he mentioned earlier in the podcast. You can head over to his website, heartofsteelbook.com, HEARTOFSTEEL book.com, to check out his awesome book, Heart of Steel, and news on White Skies, Black Mingo coming soon. Until then, if you'd like more Moonbird in your life, and hey, who wouldn't, head on over to memoriesofamoonbird.com or visit me on social media at Memories of a Moonbird. Stay safe.